3 Republican senators have introduced a bill that would move the U.S. Embassy in Israel from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem, an act the Palestinians say would further doom any chance of a negotiated peace. The bill, introduced by Senators Ted Cruz, Dean Heller, and Marco Rubio, would also recognize Jerusalem as Israel's capital. Past presidents have resisted congressional demands to move the embassy to Jerusalem, the final status of which is under negotiation and talks between Israelis and Palestinians. But Donald Trump has said repeatedly he supports the move.
Can Trump move the U.S. Embassy from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem? He can, but it would be criminal and a bad idea.
When the United States stands with Israel, the chances of peace really rise, and rises exponentially. That's what will happen when Donald Trump is president of the United States. We will move the American embassy to the eternal capital of the Jewish people, Jerusalem.
There's nothing eternal about Jerusalem. It was only the capital of all the territory of Israel for a mere 169 years. And as eternally promised to the Jews, God's destruction of Jerusalem in 70 AD mocks that myth. And why do we want a Jewish state when the Bible calls earthly Jerusalem Sodom and Gomorrah, where our Lord was crucified? That was a criminal act, and moving the embassy to Jerusalem is criminal too. For Jerusalem is under military occupation by the Israeli regime. Under the Geneva Convention of 1949, of which America is signatory, an occupying force is forbidden to settle its citizens, and nations must press for a negotiated status before affirming legitimacy. By moving its embassy from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem, America breaks its own binding pledge. Moral high ground falls to the ground when you can't even honor your own word. And those American values that Israel claims to share flies out the window by violating international law crafted to protect the weak from vicious aggression. Jews want all of Palestine for themselves, by theft, by genocide, by ethnic cleansing for their Greater Israel agenda. Now, if Palestine were declared a state, then Israel would be in breach of UN Charter's Article 51 that grants the states the right of collective self-defense. Bye-bye to Israel's settlers, walls, fences, checkpoints, and soldiers from the occupied lands. And guess what? A Palestine Declaration of Independence was proclaimed by the governing arm of the Palestinian people in 1988, fixing its validity on the UN Partition Plan of 1948. 136 countries recognized the declaration. Now the UN must discharge its duty by fully recognizing the state of Palestine. But as long as the tail, Israel, wags the dog, Jewmerica, that's not going to happen. We've had enough bad ideas. Making Israel a state was the first one. And moving the embassy to Jerusalem means more wars for Israel and more blowback in America's face. America hasn't learned History 101 just quite yet.
Donald Trump said before the election that he would move the U.S. embassy from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem. The Palestinian ambassador to Britain said on this program he didn't think it would happen. What's your feeling for this?
Well, the difference between Donald Trump and other presidents is that you don't know what he's going to do, and he's really quite capable of doing this. I think for the first time, there's a real chance of this happening. People don't appreciate, I think, two things. First of all, the fact that Donald Trump is a bit mad, and we don't know what he's going to do, and he may do crazy things. And the other thing, just how serious this is. There are no embassies in Jerusalem. All of the foreign embassies are in Tel Aviv because the world did not recognize the Israeli conquest of Jerusalem back in 1948. We're not talking about something that happened in '67. We're talking about the initial war in 1948 where Israel was established. The boundaries that the United Nations recognized for the Jewish state in Palestine did not include Jerusalem. Israel illegally occupied Jerusalem, West Jerusalem, until 1967, and then East Jerusalem in 1967. The world does not recognize it. There are no embassies there. Jerusalem was supposed to be an independent entity, an internationally recognized independent entity. Recognizing Israel's occupation of Jerusalem is an incredibly serious thing. And one would hope that somebody will advise Donald Trump and tell him that he should stay away from this.
If President Trump, once he's inaugurated, carries out his promise to immediately, and gets the Congress to go along with it, which is not a done deal by any means, to move the capital of Israel to Jerusalem. If that occurs, and it occurs rapidly and is concurred in by the Congress, then we have a whole new deal, and I'll be right with you with regard to we're going down the hill a lot faster than I thought we were.
Could you explain really quickly for viewers that aren't familiar with why it's so significant moving the embassy to Jerusalem?
Well, first of all, it's not U.S. policy and hasn't been for the entire period of U.S.-Israel relations, the formative period in particular, being about the end of Eisenhower's second term to the present. U.S. policy has been that Jerusalem is basically too volatile to be the capital of either a Palestinian state reconstituted or the Israeli state, that the history of Jerusalem is equally powerful with both groups, and that Jerusalem must therefore be left more or less multinational, if you will. That is, both countries could claim it for its religious history and so forth, but neither of them could have it as its formal capital. That's been U.S. policy for a long time, just as has been a return to the 67 borders, the right to return for certain Palestinians to be determined, and so forth and so on. Trump is proposing, and Pence has more or less said that this is going to happen, and Bannon and others have reaffirmed it, that the two-state solution, U.S. policy for some half century is dead. Well, if it's dead, Israel is dead too, because there's no way the state of Israel, supported to the nth degree by the United States, notwithstanding, there's no way the state of Israel will endure for another 25 or 30 years if it becomes the apartheid state, which it will certainly become, as a single state solution, as it were, to the problem.